Let us turn back to our interview. Do you enjoy singing at the Metropolitan?
Oh yeah, very much, very much.
I've often wondered, with a voice like yours, it's so large, there's no problem, and I know I've heard other singers say it's a difficulty sometimes because it is 4,000 people. And
well, if the voice is large or not, this is not the problem. You have to have a very carrying voice. That's something else. Even small voices, when they carry out, you know, they are to be heard all over. On the other side, the biggest voices sometimes are very small. I mean, to say when they have not got the possibility to carry out, you know, they just stay on stage. Besides of mine, you know, there's a fellow with a beautiful and large voice, and I think it's a wonderful voice, and outside it's not to be heard. That's the secret, you know.
Mm-hmm.
No, at the Metropolitan I feel fine, really. It's quite familiar. It's in a familiar way, very friendly. Jimmy Devine is a fabulous conductor and running the house in a splendid way, and Joan Inkton, you know. I feel good there.
The audience liked you very much. The first
Thank you.
It was very obvious when you came out, I'm sure you know that.
Well, because I showed them my knees.
I wondered about that. That was a very central performance all the way around.
Well, you have to.
Which it should be.
Yeah, of course. And this guy, Johannan, is very angry. Not because he is starving there in the system. He's not starving anyway, because the line says, one of the Nazarenes, I can't remember. Anyway, no, I guess it's a soldier. He sings every day when I feed him, you know. So he's not starving of hunger. He's skinny looking, but he's more the typical kind of revolutionary you can find all over, you know, but not really starving. And I mean, he's a very strong person, physically and in mind. And if he would be starving, if he would be lean and hungry looking, he would not be able to do such lines on stage. You know, this is the most important thing. Like Florestan, for instance. Florestan has to sing as high and loud as possible, and he is nearly fainting every moment. Well.
Do you have any roles that you particularly feel close to? In other words, that the character is a man that you feel very close to?
Yes, that's Eugene Onegin. Eugene Onegin with his broken personality, his his Janus character, you know. On the other side, on first side, he is very strong and can I say, he refuses her. On the other side, later on, he changes totally and he's on his knees, which means, for my opinion, when I discover myself, I'm really high sensitive, which bothers me a lot, and I look like a bull, you know. And people think, oh, he doesn't care at all, you know, just boom, hang, and so. And I have an insight like I can't tell you. It's so like a tiny little nerve. This is why I feel so like Eugene Onegin in a certain way. And I mean, in Arabella there's Mandrika, which I think by my outer and inner appearance, you know. But I do all parts. All parts I do, I like them, really. You immediately have to identify with the part when you study it, and when you do it on stage as well.
When you sang the Johannahan, it was very moving, and I think one of the reasons why is oftentimes people see that role very one-dimensionally, but you really did convey so many different personality traits that you could feel it. It wasn't just a visual thing, but the voice really.
Thank you. That's what I planned. That's what I wanted to do. Well, you have to find your own personality in your roles on stage. You cannot just repeat what other ones did, you know. You have to create your character. You have to step in your part and create it totally new. Otherwise, It's a perroquet, how do you say? One of those birds who just...
Parakeet.
Yeah, parakeet. And I always wanted to create new things and find new things. This is, for instance, because I go to the Bayreuth Festival to do Wagner Meistersinger Hans Sachs for the first time. I think Sachs is in his 40s, you know. He's got his midlife crisis, not his end-life crisis, which is the most important thing, because he really chooses, shall I take Eve, or shall I refuse? For pages and pages in the score, you know, he isn't quite sure what to do. He's suffering to take this 16 or 18 or 17 years old young lady, you know. If he would be 60 years old already, I mean, there's no question about it, you know. He could, but it would be a little bit strange in Nuremberg to take, as a 60-year-old man, to take a young lady like this. But being 40, it's still possible, you know. And that's what I want to do, to show. He really is in love with Eve. He doesn't take her because for better reasons. I mean, she's got another guy who's much younger and attractive and even wealthy, you know. But from the first point, Hans Sachs has got some difficulties with himself, you know. And this is a man of 40 years. And so I want to find a new possibility for Hans Sachs.
Mr. Weickl mentioned that Eugene Onegin was perhaps his most favorite of all of the roles that he does sing. I would like very much now to play for you from a live performance in Berlin, 1974, the complete final scene from a performance of Tchaikovsky's Eugene Onegin, the conductor Gerd Albrecht, Eugene Onegin sung by Bernd WEIKL, and the Titania gloriously sung by Pilla Lorengar.
The flowers are bursting forth with colors. And, you know, one of our listeners has sent a question in, sort of having to deal with this. Gert-Jan Zwickelaar, and I want her to appreciate my Dutch pronunciation of her name, oddly of Red Deer, Alberta, listens to us on CBC2, and she asks how we maintain the stamina we need to be an opera singer, and that, I think, encompasses dealing with health issues. Do we exercise, take vitamins, and how do you deal with sickness and pollen and allergies? Is anybody else at this table suffering allergies besides me right now? Diana?
Nope. But I had a bad cold, so I'm still in recovery.
Well, how do you deal with that? I mean, when you're in rehearsals, when you're sick, when you feel a cold coming on, do you take to your bed and have the chicken soup and the hot tea and the lemon? I don't know if these are all German remedies as we have over here, but what do you do, or do you just sort of power through it?
No. I mean, well, when it's too late, it was too late. On my last performance in Vienna, when I had to sing Zabinetta, and I already had this tickling in my throat. Well, after that performance, I was ill for 3 weeks, and no chicken soup helped. And but now I'm coming back again, and I'm fine. And because I don't have allergies, I took now my rollerblades and went through Central Park.
So you're immune.
To get back to health and to strength, at least the body. The voice will come a little bit later.
Well, you sound pretty healthy to us.
Thank
Ramón, how are you dealing with it?
But I have some allergies, and depends for the period and for the timing from the year. Sometimes 1 year is darker, or sometimes your body react in one way and sometimes in another. This year for me is not bad. This year for me is not bad. But of course, the problem with the colds and these things is a big deal. And
well,
sometimes
you and Matthew both have children. I mean, do you catch every germ that they bring into the house? I mean, or as a parent, are you immune?
Well, you hope not to, of course, but I mean, sometimes you just can't stop it. Although I have to say, usually if I am starting to get sick, or the moment that I think I have something, I always take Airborne, which is this terrific thing, and usually
This
it
is
works.
not a paid endorsement.
That's right. That's right. I don't know the lady who makes it or the company either, but anyway. But you know, I have to say, and when I'm usually able to keep something from coming if I start immediately, and you know, and I don't know, chicken soup doesn't work for me either. Actually, tastes good. I mean, I like
tastes
it, but
so good.
yeah, that's right.
I was sick for a concert I was supposed to do earlier in the year, and the 2 days before the concert, I received a gallon of chicken soup from one of our most famous Jewish delicatessens in town, from the presenter of the concert, in hopes that it would get me well in time for the concert.
And
Well, I ate the whole thing, but it didn't make me get well, but I enjoyed every minute of it. What about things like, do you have any superstitions or rituals that you engage in before a performance? Do you have to wear a certain pair of socks underneath in your costume or anything like that?
me, no superstitions, and no food. You know, a lot of people say you can't have milk or yogurt. I would have yogurt right before I sang. I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't do anything to me.
And you don't have to clear your throat throughout the whole first act?
No.
And what about what's the strangest vocal warm-up exercise that you do?
And we want to
And we
hear it.
want to hear it. Ramon, demonstrating to warm up your voice before every show, what's the weirdest sounding thing that you do?
Oh my God! Do you really want to
Yeah,
hear
we
that?
want to hear it.
I do that. I do a few minutes like
This
that.
is Rodolfo.
This is Rodolfo. Titus is a little bit different. I do something like that. Really.
What about you, Diana? You have to sing high Q sharps all the time. How do you get your voice up there?
Well, this is a radio program. I do the splits.
Demonstrate it for our radio audience.
No.
Wow, that's incredible, isn't it? And she just added a backflip too. It was amazing.
Perhaps next
Anything
season you'll
vocal?
come back and we'll podcast it for you.
Oh, terrific.
Done. Anything vocal?
Well, I do something like to test, but I haven't sung for a while, so I don't know if it will really reach
Try.
where I have
Just
to go.
aim
But I do. This is embarrassing.
I had a dog once.
Yes, I can play the dog too.
That's so sweet. Reminds me of my puppy. Matthew, what about you?
Yeah, I can't think of anything nearly as crazy as those things. No, sometimes, you know, just for placement, you might maybe something like, yeah, like this maybe, but yeah. What about you, though?
Oh, well, you know, I just do mostly the motorboat thing. And, you know, it's the closest I'll ever come to having a motorcycle, so, you know, that's kind of what I go for. But in today's opera, Satyagraha, which our distinguished List Hall audience has been listening to, we have an iconic historical figure as the lead character, unlike most of the operas that the rest of us sing. Usually the audience doesn't know anything about the characters that we play. So when you're starting to discover a character, do you invent any kind of backstory? So, you know, things that aren't in the libretto, but that maybe just for your own ability to build the character or to color or shade the character, you know, invent what the character was doing 10 minutes before the curtain went up or 10 years before the curtain went up, either in the roles that you're doing now or some of your other favorite roles. Diana? What is Serbinetta's back life like, for instance? Since we've done Ariadne together, I always wondered what was going on in your Serbinetta's mind, because she's a fireball.
It's a pure soprano.
Oh, what?
She's a pure soprano, Servinetta.
And that says a tenor. No.
Or Lucia, or the
Well,
roles that you're
Lucia,
doing.
that's actually really interesting. As I'm going to have to learn this role very quickly when I jump in October with the role debut here in New York.
Here at the Metropolitan Opera.
Yeah.
Remember?
So I well, I was wondering, her mother was dead. How was the connection with her mother? Is there some madness already there? I mean, from birth, well, in her blood, in her family, and I actually talked to some doctors, to some psychiatrists about the case Lucia and how she could murder someone, because I think there's also aggressivity. Well, she was I think she is aggressive, and how the connection is to her brother. I mean, these are all thoughts which you do preparing a role, but actually then on stage, I don't know. This comes up. Maybe when I see then as Lucia, my brother, I think they are both strong, and so I think she wants to resist, but she can't because I think she has the same power as her brother, but because she's a woman and she has to save the family and well, and love and woo-woo and all these things, she fights it, and I think there'll be emotional special moments.
And sometimes it does come out in a performance, and sometimes it just lives in our head and might color the way we even say one phrase or something like that, yeah? You know, the director might see something and bring it out in us. Matthew, what do you think about, for instance, in an opera that we're going to be performing together next season here at the Met in Don Giovanni, you sing Don Ottavio.
Oh, right.
Now, what's his past life like? What's Don Ottavio's backstory?
You know, the trouble is, and this is an interesting point, because sometimes you're able to let your show your past to the audience. You know, Lucia, everything she does is colored by what has gone on in her life, and you know, or like I think of Alfredo, who has this massive problem with his father, but you don't get to see it really. I mean, they barely are on the stage together, you know, so that has to color what goes on. But like Ottavio, he's a man of action who doesn't do anything in the entire opera. It's not his fault. I mean, you know, he apparently he's just not able to
at
run.
Every turn.
That's right. Well, in a way, you know.
He was too formal.
Say it again?
He was too formal.
Yeah, he was too formal.
Absolutely too formal.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so I mean, yeah, he was raised in a moneyed household with every, you know, sort of thing that was possible for him in his
Privilege
life.
and luxury.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, decorum keeps him from running Giovanni through at his first sight. More, he'd rather, you know, pistols at dawn. You know, that's so. I mean, like, you don't really get to see. He is a man of action. And he's a strong character who often comes off wimpy because he doesn't actually kill off Giovanni when he has the chance.
But see, you're right. We often don't see that strength in him. But if you have all that going on in your head, I think it colors your physicality and the way that you come into, you know, into the mindset of the character, don't you think?
Yeah.
Ramón, how do you feel about the, for instance, Tito?
But Tito's very complicated personality. We can speak about Tito, I think.
Well, he is the
all
Emperor of
program.
Rome.
No, it's. I always am thinking, and I ask myself, what really Tito wanted. He wanted to pass in the history as really this pity character, or he was so sober to look in always the acceptation of the people, or maybe he was very weak, and he needs the weak. He needs the people, the proven for all the people. It's complicated. It's complicated.
But you have so many choices, don't you?
Are too many. Are too many, and for the premiere I have to decide one of them.
Well, no, but sometimes that works though, because when you're in a performance, you may feel one way that's completely different from some of the others. You may make a different choice, you know.
Or maybe he's a combination of all these things.
Now, you know, in addition to creating these backstories, of course, costumes play an enormous part in how we physicalize a character. And, you know, for instance, one summer I had a summer at the Santa Fe Opera where I was doing two operas at the same time, Così fan tutti and Ariadne auf Naxos. So one night I was Dorabella, and the next night I was the composer. And sometimes I would get the physicality almost mixed up and sort of go striding on stage in my boyish way while wearing a hoop skirt as Dorabella. Now that's a problem. But the costume can definitely define and help us move differently, and even, you know, the way that we think about a character. But the real question here that we've been sent is, Has anybody ever had a wardrobe malfunction? Yes, feel free. Wardrobe malfunction, something...
When it falls
Who's going to
off.
explain this one to him? The
Splits.
seam rips, or you lose a cape, or you lose a
Oh yeah.
strap. Yeah? Something has happened to you, or?
Yes. One day I was making Lucia,
Yeah.
and my sword. I don't know. They put it in the opposite way. Something in the sword stays there.
Oh, no.
And I tried to take, and I couldn't. I was, and at the end I put all my
Strength.
my strength. I put, and the fodder is gone through the. And thanks God was in the orchestra, but nobody was between the violinists. That was scary. I was scared.
Deanna, have you ever had a wardrobe malfunction?
Oh, well, yes, well,
With all of the
several.
saucy characters that you play, I could think it could go in a very bad direction very quickly.
Well, that was as my debut as Queen of the Night in Munich, and I had a huge crown and a very heavy one with lots of shiny things on it, and underneath there was a kind of a bath shower cap, and it looked really funny. The costume was huge, with huge train and beautiful, but this funny hat underneath, and then the big crown. And when they put it on, I asked them, well, don't you want to fix this? I said, no, we do this for 35 years now, this production, so you go on, and yeah, what I did, I had, they allowed me to open the dialogue a little bit, and in one dramatic moment, I turned around and said, was höre ich? What do I hear? Dung. So, that was my crown. Pamina, that was Juliane Banz, she stood backwards to the audience, so I saw her face, her eyes went double size, and then she started to shake. and I thought, well, please, floor, open now. Well, shall I leave? I said, no, okay, good. I have to survive this.
Were you
Then
left with the shower cap just on
Yes,
your
I was
head?
with the shower cap, and I knew how horrible that looked, and I felt so embarrassed. And I said, okay, good, focus, just go on. And I finished the dialogue, and I started to sing, and there is an orchestra intermission, little orchestra music, and so I ran back and got my crown and put it on my head. So the power was back again. Mamma mia.
Matthew, has anything like that ever happened to you?
Yeah, a couple little things. Even here this season, one thing when I came into Romeo and Juliet in the at the end of the run, I had the last two performances, and there was no stage rehearsal. And in fact, I've been sick through the whole rehearsal period. So what was 9 hours or 12 hours of rehearsal was reduced to like 4. So, but they had brought my boots onto the stage during the bedroom scene. And in the first show they were there, or they weren't there, but the second show they were, but I didn't realize it, so I ran off in my bare feet and left my boots sitting there for her to sing with her father coming into the room and my boots sitting right there, and it was kind of scary.
About how the Lindemann Young Artist Program prepared you for the in-demand career you have today.
Well, I think it was probably one of the most intriguing and educating experiences I've ever had. Mostly because it was an opportunity for me as a young singer to watch and learn from the masters. I was very fortunate as a part of the Young Artist Program to be given some wonderful compromario roles that really prepared me for what I'm doing now.
Can you tell us which ones?
Sure, I did Bertha in Barbara Seville. I did the role of Madelon in Andrea Chenier. Even the offstage voice was something they prepared. But I mean, I played mothers to a lot of the greats. I was
The roles are getting younger as you've moved on.
Actually, yes, the roles are getting younger as I get older. For me, one of the highlights was watching somebody like Teresa Strada's work and seeing her method as she put a role together.
Now, what about the two roles you're singing this season here? Gertrude in Hansel and Gretel and Mistress Quickly
Well,
in Falstaff.
there's a stark contrast right there. Well, Gertrude, this will be my second time doing this role in the house. The big difference is going to be that I will be singing in German this time, which is very exciting. But I also will be with Kim Josephson, who I was fortunate enough to sing with the last time we did this. I adore this production. It's magical and beautiful, and it's one of those times in the theater where you feel very fortunate to be in the beginning of an opera so you can watch the rest of it. And I never missed the production. I never, even when I was covering it, I watched it every time because there was just something that just carried you away.
And that's unusual.
Exactly.
Many singers will leave.
Oh no, this was, when you see those children being rocked off to sleep by these flying angels and gold dust, and it's really beautiful. And I have a great love of Falstaff and a great love of the role of Quickly, because this role has introduced me to just about every opera company that I have sung in. So I've done quite a few productions since I started.
So in a way, that's your official debut role.
Yeah, it has been that for me. I was fortunate enough to do the Zeffirelli production. The last time it came around, I went on one night for Marilyn Horne. And we used this set at Wolf Trap. So I'm very familiar with this set. I'm very excited about it and very excited about the cast. It's magnificent.
And Zeffirelli is coming back.
And Zeffirelli coming back.
Restage it. Now, you also have a growing concert and recital career. How do you like to develop those programs? I know you have a very strong interest in American music.
Yes.
And that includes musical comedy.
Yes. As far as American music is concerned, the French sing French music, and the Germans sing German, and I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be singing more American music. There is an enormous amount of repertoire, and I'm also very fortunate to receive many wonderful examples of brand new pieces. Most recently, my opportunity to sing the Ellis Island vignettes, which were written for me by my friend Alan Smith, and they were very well received. These are magnificent pieces that really touched people. And we paired those pieces with American parlor songs from the 1920s. And I can't tell you how many people came up to me of varying ages and generations who were so thrilled to hear these songs again. I heard these songs through my grandfather when I was a little girl, and it makes me very happy to have an opportunity to bring those to a different audience.
Now, you've sung a great deal with opera companies across the USA.
Yes.
In cities as wide-ranging as Philadelphia, Tulsa, Houston, Seattle, Los Angeles. Do you find that the audience response to opera changes much from city to city?
Yes.
How so?
Yes. Well, I'll tell you something. I don't think I have ever experienced a hotter audience I say that in the best possible way, a more excited and enthralled audience in Seattle for the New Ring. But I never expected the kind of audience that we got in Tulsa.
For which role?
For Carmen. It was an incredibly savvy audience. There's something about singing in a smaller house that only puts on 3 operas or 4 operas in a season. There's a kind of excitement that comes from it that is thrilling.
Final question.
Sure.
What's the biggest challenge for you singing opera today?
Oh, that's a hard final question. The biggest challenge is finding enough time to do everything, because we can get where we need to go so quickly. There are so many things that we are able to do that our predecessors were not able to do, simply because they had to get on a boat or a train. that's a challenge, to just find enough time to do real quality work and to also have real quality life.
Work and life, that sums it up.
Exactly. Finding balance. Isn't that everybody's challenge?
That's it.
No matter what they do, it's
In
just
life
finding
and
balance.
performance.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Stephanie Blythe,
Thank you
for being
very
with
much.
us this afternoon.
Like these roles where I can use my acting. I mean, and I like the fact that it is a person that in the beginning is a very young girl, and then you should see that she develops into a mature woman, and I like that challenge.
And do you prepare the part by going back to Pushkin, doing research, or do you work strictly within Tchaikovsky's score and libretto?
Oh, I do a lot of research. So I mean, you read the whole Pushkin, Evgeny Onegin. That was what I started with, because you need to have the whole picture to get more. I always try to get as much, I don't know if you can understand me, but flesh and blood on the character.
Absolutely.
In a way, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I always like to know more about the role than you can actually get from the information in the opera. So.
And the heart, really, of the whole opera is Tatiana's letter scene. How difficult is this really very long aria, and how do you convey the many different moods of the character in the scene?
Oh, first of all, I have to say it's my favorite aria, because I mean, you're alone on stage, no one else can interfere, or it's really just up
you and
to
the
you.
audience.
Yes. And it's a very beautiful text, and you should see all the different colors and shades and thoughts of this young girl going through her head. She's very childish, and at the same time she's mature, and it's really her inner thoughts and all her love that comes out in this letter. And it's a good challenge.
Absolutely.
I really like it.
No question of
But
it.
you have to be aware of that you don't just sit and write this letter all the time looking down in the desk. That's very boring. So you have to look up, you have to engage the audience to be with you when you're writing this letter.
And in finding that dynamic, do you start by thinking about the physical persona, or start by studying the notes and the music?
I always go out from the text first and try to see different sides of that, and then put that together with the music, and then it's very obvious. I mean, if it's a good composer, it goes together.
I hope you've not had the experience of working with a bad composer.
No, not many.
Now, the Met's production of Onegin is visually very beautiful, but it's also a very spare production and physically extremely exposed for the singers.
Yeah,
There's
that's
very
true.
little scenery there.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, what kind of a challenge is that kind of production for you in this part?
I mean, that it's really more important than ever that you're a good actor, that you're believable, and that you go well together with the other singers on stage, and that we have had time to prepare the performance well, so it goes smoothly. But I think it's a challenge, and I like the fact that it is not too much stuff and furnitures and things.
There's nowhere to
around.
hide.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's just straight down to the story.
And do you find that by being in a production as spare as this, that your interpretation has changed in any way?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I mean, every time you do it with a different producer, and he has his ideas, and you have, of course, your ideas how you want to make the role. But every time you do it with a new person, you get new pictures, new sides and thoughts of how you want to do the character. So I guess it has changed a little during the years, yes.
You're so convincing in this part. I was wondering if you have a special affinity for Slavic opera, as opposed to the Italian, French, or German works that might be more familiar to an American audience.
I mean, I love the Slavic opera. That's something I really like to do more of in the future. I started out doing more German and Mozart roles, all that, and I love the Slavic operas because they're more dramatic in a way. It's more real characters and strong women's often. So, I mean, for instance, Yenufar, Katya Kabanova, Big Dame, that
And more
kind
and more of them are being
repertoire.
done in America now.
Yeah, yes.
What was your reaction when you first came to the Met last season and found yourself working on this enormous stage.
Yeah.
Was that a particular challenge to you?
It was something that all my colleagues had warned me about. You know, when you get to the Met, it's so huge, and I didn't think about it. I just liked that there is space around it, that you can have some space to walk around. I never have problems feeling the space in that way. No, not
And of
at
course,
all.
the acoustics are good here.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
And were there special pressures on you connected to making a debut on an opening night?
To be honest, I didn't think too much about it. I've done the role many times before, and I just enjoyed so much having
This was
such
Donna
a...
Elvira.
Yes, I just enjoyed so much having Levine conducting this and so good colleagues around me, being in such a wonderful cast. It was just a real pleasure the whole time.
Expected it of you.
That's going to come back to haunt me, I know.
Well, I was wondering if you could expand a bit on that.
Yeah. When I first heard the Abschied in Valkyrie, I knew that was a part that I really wanted to do. And with Meistersinger, just the sheer length of it was so daunting, and I thought, oh no, probably never. But I didn't really know the piece, and so over the years, many people have come up to me and said, "When are you going to do Sachs? When are you going to do Sachs?" And eventually, it became a thing like, well, I guess that's the inevitable. That's the next step. That's what everybody expects, and
So you were worn down.
right, and so finally I thought, okay, I'll go ahead and do it. But the part really didn't speak to me for a while, and now, I mean, I feel, oh, geez, if only it had spoken to me before, because now, I mean, I love it so much, and it's become my favorite role.
What caused that turnaround? How did you come to love it?
Just over time. I mean, there wasn't any big catharsis. There wasn't any, like, oh, all of a sudden the light turned on or anything. But just getting used to it, getting used to the music, then working with different people, but most specifically working with John Fisher here at the Met.
Who was your prime coach for
Right.
it?
And he really, I mean, he was so enthusiastic about it, which when you work with somebody who's enthusiastic, it instills enthusiasm in you, And so I credit him with really turning me around on it. And then as I became more and more familiar with it, I realized what an incredible part it is, both musically and the character. I mean, Sachs is really, he's the kind of character I think we'd all like to be, It's what we should strive for anyway. But it's so rewarding playing a character like that.
Now, does this represent really the most complex preparation for any part in your repertoire?
I think so, I've been working on it off and on for 5 years.
A long time.
A long time, right. And when I was originally asked to do it here at the Met, it was 4 years ago, 4 seasons ago. And I was scheduled to do it then, and I just ran out of time as far as the preparation because of my schedule and new babies, new twins. But can't really blame them. But it does take some time. But my performance schedule and everything, because I kept saying all along, if I had 6 months or a year just to devote to this, it would be fine. But when you're on the road all the time, staying in hotels, rehearsing other productions, you rehearse until 5 or 6 o'clock at night. The last thing you want to do is go back to your hotel room and work on another.
You can't clear your entire
piece,
life
right.
just to do this.
But it's the longest role in the repertoire. Most bass baritone roles you can get through in a coaching session in 50 minutes. And until now, the longest role was really the Valkyrie Wotan, which would take like an hour and 10 minutes in a coaching session. But for Hans Sachs, just doing your lines, nobody else's, and just going from your cues, no time for corrections or anything, takes 2.5 hours.
And how do you pace yourself in a part like this, especially when you're doing an uncut performance like the ones at the Met?
Well, Wagner did it. He did the pacing, really. At first, I thought, there's no way I'm going to have any voice left at the end. But he was very smart the way he wrote it out. And Act 1 is really vocally kind of a warm-up. And then you have an intermission. And then Act 2 is a very calm act, beginning with the Fleeter monologue. It lies very well in the voice. And then the scene with Ava is a calm scene. And then by the end of the act, things pick up with the Beckmesser scene. But again, it's nothing that's really vocally, well, I don't want to say not vocally challenging, because the whole role is challenging, but it's not impossible. It's not real difficult. And then you have another break, and then the third act. Again, the Von monologue is a huge piece, but it's not something that's really going to drain you vocally. And then the scene with Walter. I mean, that's when you maybe first start to notice that you might be dried out by the end of the evening. But the way he wrote it, he does give you time. He gives you pacings. And
when you take on such a demanding role, is there a heightened sense of collaboration and support that you need from the director and the conductor?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I was very fortunate in my first director, who I did it with in San Francisco, Hans-Peter Lehmann, who has just retired as intendant at Hanover. And he knew the opera backwards and forwards, and he told me a year ago, he said, "Don't worry," he said, "I've taught this role to 10 different Saxes." So I thought, oh, great. And he was such a joy to work with, a real gentleman. If anybody I knew embodied the soul of Sax, it's Herr Lehmann, and just a wonderful person, very patient. And everybody in San Francisco, they were just nurturing me, just pulling me along and nurturing me, and doing whatever I needed to have done to help me with it. And so I was very fortunate. And then coming home here to the Met to do it, everybody's just been so wonderful. So,
now, in some ways, is it easier to enact a naturalistic role like Sax than a more abstract or mythological part like the Dutchman or Wotan?
In some ways it is. There's pros and cons, but that's what I love about Sax, is that he is a real person. And so a lot of your own natural instincts come into play. There are lots of times when I'm up there in the part where I actually don't feel like I'm acting. I'm just portraying a real person, and that helps a great deal. Whereas with the Wotans and with the Dutchman, you're always sort of analyzing things. You know, sometimes things are very studied, stylized. It depends on the production, but you can't stylize this. I mean, it's real life.
A well-made play in many ways.
Exactly.
Now, you're also singing Scarpia at the Met this season. Do you enjoy playing such opposing characters?
Oh, yeah. Scarpia has always been one of my favorite roles. I always tell everybody it's my favorite role because you get one of the greatest entrances in all of opera, a wonderful death scene, and you get to go home early. But no, it's fun playing a villainous character like that. And Scarpia embodies, everything you've ever seen on TV and in the movies, like of Nazi generals and corrupt police officials and everything. So you draw on all those things, and that's a great part. I really love it.
Thank you, James Morris, and really all best to you in bringing.
How she compares, I would say she's probably maybe a little bit more complicated than, say, Ariadne. Not maybe as complicated as Salome, perhaps. But what's interesting about her as a character is that I think she takes quite a journey from the time that we are introduced to her in the first scene and what she goes through and experiences in her seeking becoming a woman and having children. And I think that's part of what makes her so interesting, as well as the fact that the music is extremely difficult to sing and has a lot of sort of leaps in it that you don't necessarily find in some of the other Strauss roles. It also has a particularly lyric opening section that is kind of a scary moment for everybody who takes on the part, but thankfully it is in the first appearance that you make on stage.
This journey that the Empress takes, has it been a kind of journey for you from production to production as well? Have there been a lot of changes with different directors' points of view?
Well, to some extent, yes. I think, of course, the first time that I did the part, I was so overwhelmed with just learning the part and trying to understand all of the relationships that I think the whole first production experience was spent just becoming familiar with everything that's involved. The next production that I did was in Berlin, and it was much more on the fantasy sort of side of things, and we played it a little bit silly to a certain extent, that the Kaiserin's experience on Earth was she manifested some sort of silly behavior in not knowing what to do or how to behave with even the sort of mundane household objects of a tea kettle or a spoon. And that was sort of interesting because, again, that would be her experience. She's not weighted on herself up in the heavens. And so it brought a certain amount of humanity that was really very interesting. Probably the most psychoanalytical exploration of the role of the Kaiserin that I ever did was the production that I did in Vienna, which was directed by Robert Carson. And he very much felt that the Färberin was the alter ego of the Kaiserin and staged things in that way. We were costumed similarly. The sets were very similar. And it really and Kaikobot a little bit clearer for me in that production because he felt that Kaikobot represented her father. And in his production, the Kaiserin sees her father die and is unable to help him. And this, he feels, is the reason for her not having the relationship with the Kaiser that would be more fulfilling and would lead to little Schatten or little children.
Now, it's still quite early on, as we're speaking in your preparation, in your rehearsal process for the Met production. Do you get a sense of how that will compare to some other experiences you've had?
Yeah, I think something that's coming out and we've only been at it for about 10 days now, is that we're going to see a relationship between the Kaiserin and Barak growing more so than I've experienced in other productions. There'll be some physical contact, and the result of that is that it makes the Färberin jealous and brings out an aspect of her personality that we don't necessarily see, and brings about her feelings for her man as well. Suddenly she sees someone else with him, and it's, what is this? And so I think that's going to be very interesting.
Fascinating. You know, it's hard to believe, but you've been at the Met for a decade now. You've done a huge variety of roles in all different repertoire. Over this wonderful decade that you've been with us at the Met, what have been some highlights for you?
Singing Chrysostomus for the first time in the new production with Hildegard Behrens and Leonie RYSANEK. Having Leonie RYSANEK standing over my shoulder as I was doing my first Chrysostomus was a pretty overwhelming experience, and I'll never forget the feeling of walking out for a curtain call, and I just could feel the audience's thrill and joy in my chest. It was the most overwhelming experience. And probably I'd have to say that the Valkyries that I've done with Placido have been really highlights of my career and something that I will take on for a very long time.
I understand that in addition to some of these new Strauss roles, there's some new Wagner coming for you.
Well, there's a very, very big Wagner coming for me. Yes. I'm going to be taking on Isolde in 2003 with the Vienna Staatsoper in a new production that's going to be conducted by Meister Thielemann. And Tristan will be Tom Moser, who is singing with us now in Fraueneschatten.
So what's it like for you to sing the role of the Kaiserin?
Well, it's a very long evening. It's a very difficult evening. But if it goes well, and if I feel like I've sung it well and communicated it well, it's a very rewarding evening.
I know that Strauss wrote Hofmannsthal saying that he felt that the Kaiserin was the moral center of the piece. Do you feel she undergoes an incredible moral journey?
Well, I think that's true to a certain extent. I tend to look at Barak as being a little bit more the moral center. Barak is not the one who has the problems. Barak is not the one who's doing the searching. He knows what he wants, and he has lived his life in such a way that he really should be having the rewards that he wants so badly. And so I kind of look to Barak a little bit more, and that may be because of the production that we're doing right now, and that relationship is becoming clearer. But he's always been very pivotal to me and my relationship with the Kaiserin, watching him and watching how he responds to what she says, and that he doesn't ever lose it when he certainly could. I mean, she's downright nasty in the things that she says to him, and yet he says, that he loves her and that, he's got a great patience. And I think that's something that's important for the Kaiserin to see. And I'm happy to say that Mr. Brendel and I have worked together enough in Ariadne, even if it was only in the prologue, that I think it's going to be a nice relationship. It's a great cast, and we've all sung together in other places, and we've sung together here in other operas. And I'm excited about the ensemble aspect of this production.
Deborah sets up a different configuration for you as a performer in relation to the other French and Italian roles that you sing in this house. You're a notable Hoffmann. How would you compare those roles, the challenges of doing the French repertory versus an early Verdi like Rodolfo?
For a long time, I was known in this French genre. These characters, which are not as... Let's talk about the music. The music of Offenbach or Massenet, in my opinion, is clearly not as strongly written as Verdi. First of all, Verdi is a master for vocal technique. The vocal lines are written in a way, if you stay in your Fach, which means you stay in the type of voice category which you should remain in. In the case of me singing Louisa Miller, it's clearly center vocal production. My timbre fits the part. If you move me into, say, Trovatore, in my opinion, one would expect a bit more metallic sound than I'm known to have. In the French repertoire, I have always approached it not so much as a vocal exercise as I have a dramatic piece of literature, and the characterization of the parts have always been paramount for me. In the case of Hoffmann, this is a figure that has immense problems with creativity. That's really the bottom line. Here's a figure that wants to create and roadblocks himself constantly. So there's very strong theater in those pieces. Verdi presents more of a problem in the sense that I find that the theater is more difficult to portray. In the case of Louisa Miller, the characterization of this part where he is involved with his relationship to his father, Rodolfo and his father, which you see all night, but you're kind of sidetracked by the relationship of Louisa and Rodolfo. But the father is stronger. It's more interesting to relate to the father figure, and the problem of Rodolfo trying to emerge. But yet again, I mean, the bottom line for me is that I look at it as how to make this vocal line come through into theater.
Now, do the same aspects of collaboration that you need as a singer apply to your work with conductors and the other singers who are around you?
Well, I'll start with the easy part of that. I generally have always gotten along with singers. Conductors are a bit more problematic, although none of that happens, of course, here, because let's start with James Levine, who is, I mean, when singers say he is the greatest singer-conductor that they've ever worked with, that's really even an understatement for how the talent abounds in this man in a collaboratory way. Jim certainly has the overall picture, musical integrity of what he wants out of that piece. But within that context, there is such flexibility from him.
As a singer who must work in many different styles on stage, do you have a preference between naturalistic and abstract productions? Are certain approaches more comfortable for you than others?
I have to say that I love abstract productions, and you could put a chair in the middle of a set that has a light in the middle, just a chair, and I would love to work around it. I find that the more enhancement we are doing with, fantastic sets, it in many ways for me is more difficult to work with a very traditional set than it is to work with a desk and a pencil and do an opera. My imagination when I was a child was so extreme with my little toys and army men and all the things that I worked with and played with, that it's the same on stage, and in a sense, for me, less is more. Coming into this house, there's such a kind of lushness around it. It is, for me, a challenge to make it work in that form. Louisa Miller has been a success here. I'm extraordinarily happy about that, and I've had to adjust to get that kind of visceral quality and use it in a stylistic way here.
And at the same time, the Onegin production, directed by Robert Carson in this house,
I love that production.
Is sort of half abstract
Yeah.
with naturalistic
I liked
elements.
it. I thought it was an excellent production. Visually, I thought it was a very interesting idea. I was very happy to be in it.
Now, you have a very wide-ranging operatic repertoire, but are there additional roles that you're still eager to learn and perform and bring to this house?
I would like to do Pique Dame at some point, because this is by far in the repertoire, in the roles that I will confront in the future, one of the most destructive characters, and a fascinating character of how he's unable to control his obsession about gambling and his need to feel fulfilled in a superficial manner. This is a fantastic part to play.
And Elévise La Juive was a major success for you.
La Juive, thank you for bringing it up. It is clearly a Jewish opera. about a conflict with Brogni, the Christianity and the Jews, and in the sense both of the forces in this opera lose. And this is a law. It is at the end of it all, one looks at La Juive and says, all of the components, all of the elements, all of the people in this opera lost because of their own selfish needs and their ability to not understand what the other side has to say. So La Juive becomes a kind of signature piece for me. And I'm really, really happy about it. It's a piece very close to my heart, very, very close to me.
So whether it's La Juive or Tales of Hoffmann, the element of personal identification is the fundamental building block for you.
I can't create something if I don't feel that the character belongs to me, that the character, I can internalize what this character is trying to say.
Let me congratulate you once again on the success of Louisa Miller, and thank you very much, Neil Shicoff, for being with us today. This is Robert Marks.
1998, you first each sang your
a whole
first...
18 months ago, yeah. It does seem a bit like a lifetime has passed in between, though.
I would think so, you know, and you've done, what, 4 productions of it now?
Yes, I did another one in Salzburg that we also took to Florence.
Mm-hmm. And Miss EAGLEN, you've done Seattle and the Met, right?
Seattle and the Met, yes.
Yeah. I know that came at a time, too, where Gioconda, which you performed in Chicago that same year, was brand new to you, too, so, well, you really took on a lot.
Yeah, I did 10 Isoldes and 10 Giocondas in 2 months.
Wow.
And they were both new roles to me. And then I needed a rest, but that was fine.
I'd like to go back to the start for both of you of this opera. I mean, when you decided you were going to do it, how did you approach? Where did you start? Where does one start? I mean, it's such a big role and expansive.
Well, for me, I always start by getting a recording, probably more than one in this case I did, so that I can hear other people singing, but quite a ways out, a couple of years in advance. And I don't necessarily look at the score and try to think about how I'm going to do it. I just want to hear and feel the music. And the conductor choice is more important than the singer choice, simply because I want to get an idea of the piece and the flow of it. And then I tend to crack the score open and go at both the words and the music at the same time.
Starting with Act 1 and going on? Or?
Yeah, and just kind of getting used to it, and then bring a coach in who starts hammering it into your little thick skull, and you know, then it'll be put away because you have other projects that are on the go too. Then you come back to it, just keep returning, and it seems actually to hold its own, and you don't have to relearn all that much. At least I don't find I have to relearn that much, and it has somehow matured even in between.
Mm-hmm. Miss EAGLEN, I know you lived with the Liebestod, have lived with the Liebestod for a number of years now. And when you started on the whole opera, what was your approach?
Well, like Ben, I certainly started a good 2 years before, but I prefer to start a new role just by sitting at the piano and playing and sort of singing along. I mean, I like to teach myself roles right from the beginning. I like to work with a coach when I actually know a piece. So I just kind of would sit there and do half an hour here and there when I was on the road or when I was home, and take the score with me for a couple of years and open it when I got the chance and just look at bits and pieces and then put it away again. And it's true, it does kind of stay there. It's kind of weird how it happens, but in my opinion, it's much the best way to learn a new role is over a long period of time. And you kind of know it then without realizing you know it almost. It becomes part of you that way rather than just sitting down and having to memorize. So I started that way. I mean, it was kind of nice to have done the Liebestod a lot because, you know, at the end of the night, it's good to come back to something that you know pretty well.
Jane has the advantage of being able to play the piano and actually sight read the music. When I play the piano, it's for my own amazement. And I do what I call a sort of an arthritic Oscar Peterson, kind of jazzy, but not really very good.
He's good, actually. He is good. He does himself an injustice.
But I don't sight read the
but it's still
piano.
But I can't do the jazz, so between us we make a perfect pair.
It sounds like an interesting approach to opera, though, Mr. Heppner. I must say.
I'll do this one. It's because this is for the broadcast, so we do. War Mohr dir so wert, nun wieder nimm das Schwert, und für es sicher und fest, dass du nicht dir entfallen lässt. I'm talking to you, good old Mohr old. and so on.
Oh boy, that's the second or third recording of Tristan you'll be doing right down the line.
That's right, yeah.
No
That's
doubt.
when I
Tristan Light.
That's when I substitute the Liebestod for the song from Titanic, which is the
My heart
same.
will go on.
Well, it has the same subtext. You know, he's dead. I'm not. I'm going to sing.
That's right.
So it's exactly the same.
Was it a conscious thing for you to do Brunhilde before you did Isolde?
I mean, it wasn't a conscious thing. I didn't sort of turn down Isoldes before I did Brunhilde, but I certainly think that's definitely the way to go. I mean, I think that the Valkyrie and Siegfried Brunhildes are, I mean, they're difficult, but they're nowhere close to Isolde and the Götterdämmerung Brunhilde, which is in itself, I think, much easier than Isolde. Isolde's about as hard as it gets, I think. It's also as long as it gets, which is, you know, the other thing. And although Götterdämmerung is a long night, you're not on. I don't leave the stage for the first 2 acts. You know, you're there all the time.
Yeah.
You don't even get the option of just going off for a little scene somebody else does. You're there all the time, and at least in Götterdämmerung you do get a chance to go off a couple of times. So, but I'm happy with the way they worked out. That they came, I think, in the right order.
Wagner, how did that come to the Heppner voice? Did your voice grow? How did your voice develop into a Wagner?
I started as a lyric, sort of a choral lyric singer, and I credit a lot of the musicianship that I do have to singing in choirs as much as I did. I sang 4 years in a professional choir, plus a lot of other years singing in university, etc. And I was kept in the lyric tenor mode for a long time, until I had sort of a vocal, I don't know, I may call it a crisis towards the end of my 20s, and found a new teacher, and within the first lesson or two, he said, look, kid, I think it's time to make a voice switch to spinto. And so I was concerned, perhaps it was early, and he said, no, if your voice is right for it, it will work. And within a few weeks, we discovered that the German repertoire seemed to be particularly well suited to my voice, and it just kind of progressed from there.
You both, as I say, did your first productions of this just in 1998, which was a short time ago. How has the role changed? What have you learned about it while in singing it over this time? What are some of the aspects of it that have changed for you or come to you more so, or Miss EAGLEN?
I think the more you do any role, the deeper your understanding of it. And with a role as great as Isolde, it's pretty much never ending how much you're going to find in it. So every time you come back to it, there's going to be something new, I'm sure. And I think, without even thinking about it necessarily in between, just the fact that you've done a production, you come to another production, there are certain things which occur to you that's new, or just a slight twist on what you thought the first time. I mean, I don't think your basic belief in the character or what you think of is the essence. For me anyway, it doesn't really change. When I study a role for the first time and work through it the first time, you find what it is in that role that's right for you and what works. And I don't think that really changes, but I think subtleties do. I also think that the great roles, and this is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, I think they get harder and harder. I think there's a great thing about being young and naive and doing something for the first time. You just do it. It really does. You just look at the score and you go, okay, that's what I do. And then when you've done it a few times, you realise that it's difficult. And I found that with a few things, The same with Norma. The first time I did Norma, I just did Norma. The second time I was like, oh, actually, this is really quite hard. And I think also that is because you want to put more into it. You see more into it. You appreciate more musically what you want to do, or dramatically, or with the text, all kinds of levels. And it almost seems like a kind of a bottomless pit. There's just no end to where you can go. And when you start the first time, you just want to do it and get through it. After that, you start seeing so much that you really feel you could go on forever.
And you start to work towards the edge, just let's say vocally anyway. You start to go towards the edge and say, how much more can I go? And so you have a little more courage because you've already got those initial ones under your belt. And then you can, a little more acting, a little more dramatic, which sometimes does impact on the vocal, on your vocal ability during the evening. So you start to explore the role a little bit more.
What about pacing? Was it a problem at first, or?
Yeah, for me it was. We actually rehearsed it with no cuts in Seattle, and when I got to the dress rehearsal. Then I instituted a cut in Act 2 because I couldn't repeat it every 3 days. It was an impossibility for me, but I've got it now, I think.
It wasn't really a problem for me. It was the one thing I didn't really think about. You know, I'd already done the Götterdämmerung Brunhilde. I'd done A Ring, which is 3 different operas in a week, or in 5 days pretty much. And so I figured I had enough to worry about without sort of putting the extra pressure on as whether I could get through it, because I'm kind of lucky. I'm built like an ox or whatever, and I feel like I can go on forever vocally, really. So that was it. I mean, obviously, it crosses your mind that you have to still be standing to sing the Liebestod after 5.5 hours, but I figured I probably would be.
I note, Miss EAGLEN, that you mentioned in the program notes about you and bio that the love duet is such a special piece for you. I imagine for both of you. What knockout music it is to begin with, I suppose. You know, your feelings about
Well, it's one of the things about cutting back. When my entrance in Act 2 comes in, it's big, explosive music and this passionate music that emerges. Then after that, it's very sensual and soft, and most of those nice elasticity in the chords has gone because of the preceding bits of music. So it takes enormous concentration to make it work. And it's just beautiful music to sing, and I think I enjoy that as much as anything.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it really is beautiful. And I think the way Wagner wrote the two voices together and when they sing together, because Wagner didn't write a huge amount of, I mean, The Ring, there's like a trio and a duet, and that's it, of people actually singing together. And yet he puts the voice parts together so wonderfully. They sort of intertwine and overlap, and you know, it's really very wonderful writing, I think, and really fun to sing. I actually enjoy it. I mean, I think it's incredibly beautiful music, but I think when we actually get to sit there and sing it, the last thing you're thinking about is how beautiful it is, and one hopes that, you know, the audience think, gosh, that's beautiful, when really the concentration is enormous. And so you lose sight of the fact you're just thinking about singing this line.
You're concentrating on breath control, because sometimes the tempi that's chosen can be a little bit slower than the breath you have.
Right.
And so and it's not something. It varies from day to day. That's the horrible thing about it all.
Yeah.
Is it's kind of an art
right.
rather than a science.
I would think that it's the pacing of Tristan, as you say, that beginning of Act 2, you know, big, and then you have to bring it down, and then in the third act, there's so much declamation.
Well, it's interesting that actually Act 3 is much easier, at least for me, than Act 2. Act 2 is the whole key to the role, and my part of it is less than what Jane has to do. I mean, she's been singing solidly for 2 acts, and has a scene before I even arrive. But then there's this big music, and it's very heavily orchestrated, so it's hard to sing through. So it takes a lot of energy and concentration. And then Act 3, it starts low, and you can kind of direct your voice, sort of line it up in the early part with the voice on the low range, and it starts to find its groove again. And then each time you collapse, it tends to start from that low point, and you can realign yourself once again. So it's not as hard as it seems. Although there are points when it's, quite frankly, a miracle that anything comes out at all.
What's the toughest part of Tristan for you, Miss EAGLEN?
Actually, the beginning. I mean, Isolde's biggest singing and also the most dramatic emotionally is right at the very beginning of the opera. So that was something that when first time I did it, we worked quite hard on to try and find this emotional high at the very first thing you sing. And the narrative and curse, which is also very early on in the opera, is very dramatic and declamatory and so on. After that, it's, you know, you sort of can relax much more and so on. But it's an unusual role for that reason. You know, usually you have, as a character, you have a certain amount of time to sort of find yourself and kind of be the character, so that the audience get used to whoever you are, and then some things builds up and so on. But you're right into it with Isolde.
What is I almost said trick, what is the art that makes your thinking and pacing, and, you know, you have the voice to consider, you know, and down the line, etc., but yet we in the audience feel all the emotion of this piece? You never go too far. How in the world do you do that? But yet you still convey the emotion as though you're giving everything.
I tell
Remember about that debut? That's a long time ago.
Oh, but I remember enough well.
Well, tell
yes,
us.
because it was my first time, not only the Met, but my debut also in United States. And you can't forget this, for the first time. And I remember there was the all sold out. I was so surprised because I found that many friends in the colleagues with Merrill, Tucker, they come to me with flowers and they say, welcome in our family. It was the best thing I can have. It was a very incredible night. I was with emotion, a big emotion, but at the end, I was so happy, near to cry. And it's incredible when you come out and you see this black, I call in Italian buco nero, I don't know what is very big. It makes you a little nervous, but I know very well now the theater after so many years. I think they love me, but me too. I love them.
Do you have any special secrets for preserving your voice, for keeping it fresh?
I think so. I forget when I take holidays. When I go at home, I forget the opera. I forget the music. I am the normal mother, the normal wife, the normal grandmother. This is really important to recharge the battery, I say. I come back always with big enthusiasm. Also, I must thank God because I'm enough healed. And naturally, I work. I work really hard for the technica, for everything.
Do you do any exercises? Do you run? Do you sit up?
No, run is so difficult for me. But I can do some gymnastica, something, but not too much. I don't play tennis because, I have not the temperament. I'm not a sportive. I am an artist. I start to laugh. I start to think, why I must run too much for a ball? No, it's not my case.
Mirella FRENI, when you are home on holiday,
yeah,
do you listen to music?
When I'm at home, I'm involved with my family, with the grandchildren, my daughter. And naturally, I never push for to listen what I wish. I listen what it's nice because it's something new. I know everything about the children songs because the cartoons. I know many things about this.
When you move to heavier roles, like Tatiana in Onegin, did you consciously work toward that, or did it just evolve naturally?
No. I must know what Pushkin is written, and I read it, thanks God, in Italian. I have Nikolai Gyaurov is my husband. He told Mirella is a good translation. After I start to work for the music and naturally for the Russian words, because I don't speak one word in Russian, but I understand, I know very, very well what I sing, what the other sings to me, because I must react.
Mirella, if you go back to the original text, the original story,
yes,
you will very often find that the librettist has taken great liberties with it. Any of the Shakespearean operas.
Yes, but it's interesting to know the character of Tatiana, because naturally in the libretto you can't put all. They must take the better thing for the theater, there is another thing. But I need it to know very well the character of Tatiana, or somebody else, like Elisabetta in Don Carlos. When I have been in France to see very, very well Fontainebleau, to visit, to see. I have been in Spain to see the Escurial, to see everything, to see the difference, It's important for me to know, to build something true, not only with the fantasy.
Mirella, you are currently involved with performances of Falstaff here at
Yes.
the Met. Now, there won't be a Texaco broadcast this year, but they are taping the opera for television, so we'll see it next season.
Yes.
How different is it for you singing a comic role?
Oh, nobody can believe it. I was born for comic role. It's incredible. I've done always serious role, really, because for me it's so natural. When I've sung the regiment's daughter. There was really something. Everybody was so surprised.
Are there any roles that you would like to add that you haven't had a chance to?
I am so happy what I've done. Just
You're very
this
happy.
moment, something. No, I must do the debut next year in April in La Scala of Milano with Fedora. I never sang before.
So you are
Yes,
branching out still.
I have another one, new, but we look if it's another child, my son, my daughter, Fedora, because I call all my roles like my little babies, you know. I hope this Fedora enters in the family.
Well, so Mirella FRENI, thank you again so very much for joining us.
Thank you to you. Bye-bye.
Major figure in her long career, the conductor Herbert von Karajan.
I can't forget the first Mimi, because it was the first time also I worked with him. And when he arrived to La Scala, because I know it, somebody told him, listen, this young singer, she will be with you forever, because we are sure you understand that she has something close to you. And he said, okay, but he never heard me, never met me, he don't know me, you know. And he looked at me, Maestro Karajan, I understand immediately, said, yes, she is Mimi in the physic role. Okay, but after he want to hear me to sing, and Maestro, he opened the score. He started from the last act. He don't ask me to sing the aria or duetto. No. He start to go in the last act for to see me too. For when I study Mimi, for to understand the character of Mimi, I found it in the last act. It was really something. This made me more comfortable, and we started to sing Sono andati, the last aria before she died, and Maestro, he started to look at me, he smile a little bit, and suddenly he jump up, he say, we go.
Did he ever talk to you about how to pace yourself and how to pace your voice before you started to take on more heavier, more dramatic soprano roles?
Yes, because I was always worried to do something too much heavy for me. I said, Mirella, you must be careful, because if you are not ready, it will be a disaster later for your voice. I was really careful.
Well, let's take an example. Desdemona from Otello. When did you decide, when did you feel, okay, I'm ready to tackle this role?
Listen, it was Maestro von Karajan asked to me, when he asked for a new role, was during performances when we take a bow. and he said, Mirella, I want to do next year Otello, you will be Desdemona. Maestro, I don't know if I can sing. I answered, okay, you try. I said, okay, I try, but you also, I tell you now, with respect, if I can't do, I leave you also in the day of the general rehearsal. You take this risk. He said, okay. I worked always in this way. I still here singing after 50 years of career. Oh my God.
Well, of course, this is what everybody wants to know from any singer who lasts a long time, and especially from you, because you are still singing so beautifully. Everybody wants to know, how is it possible to keep a voice for 50 years and to still sound good?
Listen, to be honest with your possibility, for to do the right role in the right time and don't too early, because you know if you start to push too much in very hard role, you are not ready. You destroy your voice, your nerves, because you are more scared when you go on stage. I prefer always to stay 2 steps back than to do half en avant. You understand? But I think if the young singers they take care, they must learn to wait, don't to have everything, because suddenly, because you need really to have to take time for to learn it on stage, to grow up. Is a very difficult this career to sing, and sometimes the young singer they want to have everything. After few years they can do nothing.
Well, do you
this
think...
is a pity.
Now, you've done several Russian roles, which
Yes.
I would think would be quite challenging, just learning the language.
Yeah. The first was Evgenio Onegin. Also, I have sung also this the Met, Tatiana.
Tatiana and Eugene Onegin.
Yes. I've sung also Pig Dam. Now Jeanne d'Arc.
Joan of Arc,
Si.
yes, and the Tchaikovsky.
Si. But I must say the more difficult is Jeanne d'Arc, because is, I repeat, archaico, Russian, very old, and is more difficult for the pronunciation to remember also, because it's really strange, but it's beautiful. It is really tessitura not easy, because I think Tchaikovsky there he make it like more like an instrument. It's not too much vocale. If you don't have a very strong technica, you will be in trouble.
It's also an opera that's not performed very often, so you
I
don't get...
repeat, because it's too difficult. It's too difficult. But it's beautiful. The music is fantastic. The audience Saturday night, they were received standing ovation, and it was fantastic. For me, because I like really the music, I like to sing. It's a joy for me to do this. It's not. I am very happy when the audience they understand what you have done and you give to them. It's all.
But it's also, I would think, challenging to prepare for it dramatically, because here you're a mature woman and you're playing essentially a teenager.
Yes. They say I on stage I look young I move younger. They say also in the critic today they was wrote. I am surprised.
You've worked with many great conductors, of course, around the world, including James Levine.
Yes, for me to work with Jimmy is fantastic, because they are not problem. He is a great, not only a great conductor, but great musicians. A great, in the same time, is a friend. You know, you are really relaxed when you work with him. It's fantastic with Jimmy. Really, I'm happy he will be also now for my gala.
When I asked the question, you broke out into a big smile. So obviously you have a great rapport with him.
Yes. You know, after at the beginning, I was naturally a little scared, because I respect for the conductor. But later, he is so friendly. Is really the atmosphere change in 1 second. You know.
Ms. Freni, you wrote a memoir called Mio Caro Teatro.
Not me. It was
ghostwritten, so you wrote it collaborating with somebody.
They interviewed me. It was a good friend of mine, Signor Giuseppe Gerpelli. And me, I wrote.
But the title is My Dear Theater.
Yes.
What do you think is the dearest thing to you about your life in the theater?
It's like you have a second life, you know. One is my private at home. This I defend terribly, but the other one is artistic life. With this is like for me, a big papa, a big mama. I go, I do what I learned to do. E basta. For me, it's something like this. Very, very important. Very, very deep in my, come si dice, dentro di me.
Inside you, deep inside you.
Okay, oh, aiuto.
You said earlier that you grew up on stage, that you grew up in the theater.
Because the family of my mother, they loved really much the musica, the opera. There was a cousin. She was a very big opera singer, Valentina Bortolamassi. My family, everybody was, they loved the opera music. I grew up with them. But me too, I was always, I remember when I was 5 years old, fascinated from the voice. For me, the voice, when they sing, they have beautiful voice. Doesn't matter if it's opera or they go inside. To me, they give me incredible emotion. For me, canto is really a big part of my life, of myself also. I repeat, I'm really, really lucky. I realize my wish, my dream, you know. This is not possible for everybody sometimes. I worked really hard, I still work hard, but I have done, thanks God.
All that's really taken out of me is the intensity of concentration that's required. But from a standpoint of sort of raking my own emotions, no. I couldn't do that. If I raked my own emotions, if I was suffering those emotions, they would not be conveyed to the audience. The audience would only see a silly man up on the stage who became emotionally involved, and it would embarrass the audience. I have to convince the audience that Grimes is weeping, that Grimes is heartbroken. I want to say something, though, because you touched on it, over this very subject of emotion. There is today, in the whole of the music world, a great smearing taking place in the line between artifice and art, between entertainment and artistic entity. The operatic art form is a form that remains an art form so long as it appeals to the intellect. It has to appeal to the intellect like a great painting. It appeals to the intellect through the senses. But there is a tremendous, tremendous smearing of this line that's taking place today. And we are satisfying ourselves too often with just appealing to the senses. And we must not be confused. That is not art. That is artifice. That is entertainment. That is titillation. That is hysteria. But that is not intellectual pursuit of excellence, nor a pursuit of a search for truth. And I'm very concerned that I see that infecting the upper world. Because my emotionalism is emotionalism for a purpose, to serve a higher purpose of getting through the emotions of the individual to serve an intellectual end. I draw the audience into my arms and I say, come up here on the stage with me. Feel these emotions. Feel this anguish. Feel this rejection. And go away and think about how you treat your fellow man. How could I possibly stand before the majesty of a work like Peter Grimes and feel anything but humility? How is it possible? Anyone who believes that they should use a work of art for their personal glorification just absolutely appalls me. Who do we think we are that we would dare to use Verdi or Wagner or Britten or Mozart for our glorification? That's madness.
At the same time, through you, you can reveal to a larger public what the creator of the work may be intended, or...
But that's my job.
That's your job.
It's my job to reveal Grimes, not to say, look at me, to look at Grimes. I want Tristan to be seen. And I think that to some extent I've succeeded in that. I think people like to come and see Grimes, not come and see Vickers. You know, here I am, and in a way I resist, as you know, I resist interviews like mad, because the fact that I give an interview tends to put myself between the audience and the work. I don't want an image between the audience and the work. I want the audience just to see the work, that's all. And it's my job to reveal it in the most complete way that I am capable of, intellectually, vocally, physically, emotionally.
Well, I'm very happy that you consented to give the interview.
Oh,
because
Marilyn, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to, but I just don't like inflating the personality so that it gets between the audience and the works I sing.
I understand, and also you need a private...
Oh, I'm a very private person.
You are indeed. Well,
yeah.
It was wonderful seeing
Oh,
you
thank you,
and talking
Marilyn.
with
Thanks. It was a pleasure to see you again.
Tones, and does that, by inference, mean there is also such a thing as an open tone?
Well, this is one of the items we could probably spend all day on, but very quickly, I think a lot of teachers today use the term covered tone, and when I teach students, I get away from using the term altogether, because the student literally starts to cover something up.
Is it like a swallowed tone? A muffled tone? Can you demonstrate it vocally?
I can demonstrate it because the second part of that question has the word open in it.
Yes.
And I'll use a little phrase from Falstaff, which we'll do in a couple weeks here on the radio. The covered tone generally starts for a tenor in the passaggio area, where one goes through a voice register into a new one. And an open tone there can not only be unpleasant to the listener's ear, but it can also be unpleasant to the singer's throat. And here's the first phrase of Fenton's aria in Falstaff. I think I'll illustrate it open first. Dal labbro il canto estasiato vola. Now that ah was wide open. Maybe not as open as one could sing it, but every... Yeah, Cheryl kind of liked it. But I was trained, and I think a lot of people are being trained, that in that passaggio area you have to alter the sound to make it a little more pleasing. And this is what we do. And I'll open it from a, forgive the expression, covered position, and make it a little brighter after I've landed on it. Dal labbro il canto estasiato vola. I do see some heads nodding.
On estasiato you opened.
That's right.
Right.
And it's just a matter of making the tread last a little longer on those chords. If you
It's pacing yourself.
it is protection.
Is it more difficult covered versus open?
It's something you must learn to do.
It depends on the singer, I suppose, too.
Yes, it does. All of our throats are different, but it becomes a muscle memory factor, and once the muscles have it, it becomes an automatic safeguard.
Cheryl.
Well, I basically agree with everything that Doug said. Although one needs to set up, we use words out of context. You have to decide in what context you are using them. A layman's vocabulary, talking about covered or open, can simply mean one is more cupo, using an Italian word, more covered, darker, swallowed, as Richard said before, which is just a general impression of a sound, or a more open sound, brighter, more forward, more point in it. Layman's vocabulary. From a vocal technique
point of view, which is in a way more what Doug was talking about. The word cover, as used by many voice teachers, means to go into top voice. It does not mean, it means to cover the sound without having a covered sound. And we get into semantics here. And that does make sense. You can have a more open covered sound. You can have a more closed covered sound. The more open covered sound in the high voice is that's what Doug was talking about. Cheryl, it's beginning to sound like double Dutch to me. Can you demonstrate it? Richard, you used to sing in all those recording sessions. I know, but I can clear a control room when I sing. That's because it was always open. It's right off my larynx. That's it. Right. You I have didn't no sing diaphragmatic from down support. deep inside. No, That right. was- But you needed more coverage. I need a lot more training. But let's not get on to me. Right. Now, Brent, do you have anything to say about this complex?
I agree with them both, and it sounds like a lot of hocus pocus to me.
Yes. Well, a lot of it, I think, as Cheryl says, is semantics, and I think that's what's so difficult for young singers, especially starting out with a vocal coach or a teacher, because words can mean anything, and it depends on who's saying them and who's hearing them. But anyhow, let's abandon that for the moment, because I think it's a seminar discussion.
33 years ago, you have sung all of the roles that would seem to be death for the voice. I mean, starting with Lady Macbeth, which was the debut role, but on through Elektra and all of the Wagnerian roles and the Strauss other works. How is it that your voice is in such fine flower?
That's the question everybody is asking me now. I think the best guess I have, it's two things. I was born with a very big voice, with a very easy top, and a natural gift of singing. Second, I think the most important thing was in my career, I undersang. By meaning not singing very early or very quick, very fast stuff, really big stuff. And then smart enough, I think, and right enough to change the repertoire and change my Fach. Not singing, no longer singing the high soprano parts, which I, of course, couldn't do because I don't have the stamina.
One of the other elements that I think has been so important throughout your career is the strength of your dramatic performances. This is not just somebody standing there and singing in a nice way. It is an involving performance. Does this also come as a natural gift, or is this a determined point of view that you take?
I didn't want to be a singer in the first place. I wanted to be an actress. Acting was always my favorite theatrical love. That's why I still love to go to the theater and watch it. Otti Schenk, he's directing one of the most famous theaters in Vienna. He said to me, "I'm so unhappy you still have so much voice. You want to act in my theater." I'm not sure I could do this without the music.
How does the music help you?
Very much. It makes me forget where I am. There are 4,000 people out there and a huge orchestra and it makes me, music is such a tremendous part in my life, I love to go to concerts. So I never play opera at home. We play absolutely chamber music or symphony. I love it. I think it's beautiful. And the most beautiful thing which happened in my later years now, I found to Mozart. I never could understand Mozart. There was always a thing, I said, my God, everybody says it's heavenly music, why don't understand it? And suddenly it was like a click, and I'm crazy about Mozart.
Now, does this apply to the operatic Mozart or only chamber music and
the chamber music and the symphony. Well, the opera I always liked, although I didn't sing very much.
What is your approach to a role? Do you start it from the dramatic values, or do you learn the notes first and then worry about it?
Well, you have to divide now, former times and now.
Well,
in former times I looked, how high does it go? I was so stupid enough to look in the score, how many high C's, how many D's, what, this and this and this. I was stupid enough to say I only take it on if it has very, very many high notes. Then later looked about the story. I was always interested in singing a part in which I can show my acting abilities. So, and now even more, of course. I just did a new part. The last I learned, I will not learn anymore. It's enough now. I did in Russian the Countess in Big Dam, which was a fantastic experience, and I love it, and I hope one day to do it here.
Well, when you were learning it, was it from the drama forward to the music?
Yes, especially with the Big Dam. I read the beautiful Pushkin novel, which is heaven.
Leonie RYSANEK, we're finally going to see you sometime back already. Does this genre of opera fit in with what you've been telling us about all of these others that have the dramatic strength?
Yes, both. Of course, much more Jenůfa, Kostanička. It's a beautiful part to begin to sing. It's the difficulty of the part, but it's the beauty of the part.
Difficult in which way?
It's a big part. It's all Kostanička, the second and third act. It's unbelievable difficult, but it's beautiful. Although she's a murderess and she's horrible as a figure, but in the end, I think one pities her. One has to understand why she did it. Kavanica is another thing. She is so horrible, so threatful, so hateful. I hate her from the beginning. I hate myself.
Don't you have to do something within yourself to be able to play a hateful character? I mean, you have to. You're such a nice, sweet person. I mean.
Yes, everybody says this. Maybe there is in all of us something very evil. Maybe I have to tell her to bring it out. Ele always says to me, it's easy for you to be such a sweet person. All your aggression, you can get rid of it on the stage. So that he's excused me if he yells at me.
I see. What's special for you about the Met?
This is very special. That's a love affair. For me, I'm proud to be still around here. I like to think they like me and love me.
Well, I think it's plain from the audience reaction, from all other reactions, that we do love you. And we hope that you'll spend another 33 years coming back to the Met here.
As a ghost, yes.
Well, one way or another. And it has been a joy to welcome you to this broadcast.
Thank you very much.
You opened here in London. We're actually talking in the middle of London in a wonderful apartment overlooking Green Park and other parts right by Buckingham Palace. On Monday night you opened in a new production at the Royal Opera House Covent Garden in Die Frauen Schappen, produced by or directed by John Cox, designed by David Hockney. I'm sure the listeners in the United States would like to know something about it.
And conducted by Werner Teiting. It was actually a wonderful evening, and it's sheer joy performing in this production, because it's such a beautiful production, and it's quite magical also. The costumes are quite original and very beautiful, and the whole thing is rather like a fairy story kind of approach to it, and very true to the text and to the story. Afterwards, we had a little party in the Crash Bar to celebrate, and the man in charge of the Crash Bar, he said, "Oh, I could tell it was such a wonderful evening, and everyone was enjoying it. I've never sold so much champagne in the intervals. People were really enjoying it and celebrating. It was a beautiful performance musically also. I really look forward to the remaining 4 performances, and in fact to going with the production to Los Angeles. We will be taking it there, and I'm sure that the public in America are going to be thrilled.
Do you find there's a difference between that kind of warmth that you received from the London audience and the kind of audiences there are in other theatres, in, say, Germany or in New York?
At the Met, I mean, the public there can be just great. I remember I went over at short notice to do a ring cycle a couple of years ago, and they just went wild. It was marvellous.
While we're talking on that, the ring cycles are one of your great the calling cards, I suppose, in a way. But you also, of course, do the individual operas separately. You're doing Valkyria at the Met in December.
Yes, we also take it to Tokyo then to with the Met.
And then a complete ring cycle, 3 cycles in the spring.
Yes, I look forward to that very much.
How do you think if you've only got to perform Brunhilde in Valkyria as a couple of performances, do you find physically you approach it differently than if you've got to do Brunhilde in 3 operas and 3 times 3 in the cycle?
Not really. The one disadvantage is that one gets kind of cut off in the middle, you know, when you're put to sleep in the Valkyrie. You know that you're not going to be woken up a couple of days later. And that's the wonderful thing about doing complete ring cycles. It's so fulfilling. I think for the audience and the artists, because when you live through in a week a ring cycle with the audience, you really feel you've kind of gone through it together and you've achieved something. It just closes also the development of the character, because she grows up obviously as she goes along in great depth as a character, and in the Valkyrie she's a young girl, and it's you know, you feel incomplete in some ways.
And which are the most memorable for you, production-wise?
Of course, the Sherrill ring in Bayreuth, which was really fantastic. I mean, it was such a wonderful time working with Patrice Chéreau and Boulez on this marvelous production. It was quite a difficult time because we had quite a lot of opposition in the first few years, and then it became such a tremendous success that after the final performance of the Götterdämmerung we had over 1.5 hours applause, which was quite amazing.
And how much of those ideas that Chéreau gave you and which you gave to him while you were working on it together, how many of those ideas do you now carry with you to other productions?
All of them. One never disregards anything which is, you know, good. You try to. This is the exciting thing about working with different producers and on different productions at different times. You grow in the character, and you know, this is everything that you learn, you incorporate it. Also in a production like the Met, which is a much more traditional but very beautiful production, I think to use the approach that I discovered working with Chéreau, to bring the drama, the intensity, the very human touches that we found. These can be brought to any production, but the character remains very much the same. This is something you can obviously only do if you are so secure in every way musically. When I enter the stage, I'm not playing a character, but I actually am this person, and the feelings that I'm having, which one expresses through the text and the music, are real, and that it's, you know, really happening here and now. And that's the great thing about live music.
Gwyneth Jones, thank you very much.
Yours, yes. And you are therefore knowing that even though it's not a recording, there are a zillion people out there listening. And does that put additional burden on you or pressure on you?
It does, but in a role as practiced as Adina in L'Elisir d'Amore, for me, it actually is. It's just like giving a launching pad. It just becomes a joyful experience. I think if it's the first time singing a part and you know that is the broadcast, then there probably is a great deal more pressure. But I'll probably just revel in the whole experience.
That's certainly how it comes across to us when we watch and when we listen. Tell us just a little bit about your experiences at the Met.
I have to just give special credit and praise to Maestro James Levine. Maestro Levine brought me to the Metropolitan Opera in 1977, so I guess I'm coming up to a 15 or 16 year, it doesn't seem possible,
No,
anniversary.
I was just thinking, it couldn't be.
Yes, it is. I've been blessed with having just the best advice, and I don't know, somehow being able to ferret out random input from input that really is germane and important to a young singer's career. And I think that's probably the most difficult aspect of a career for a singer to have, because so many ideas and so many opinions are coming at a young performer. To be able to listen and say thank you, and to know what is good for you and what isn't. And it's not possible, at least it is not for me, to do that on my own. And so I usually put it in a pot and mix it up and let it simmer, and then come out with what I find is based on all of this expert advice that's been given to me, and come up with a formula that works for me. And I hope that that contributes to longevity and keeping the voice spinning and vibrating.
Kathleen, quite aside from the good advice and the shepherding, as you put it, that James Levine has provided to you, you and so many other singers have singled him out as being a wonderful conductor for singers. What makes him so? You've worked with Karajan, another one. What makes these people special?
Well, first of all, they let you sing. They let the voice have a bloom and an arch in the phrase. And they seem to almost be able to telegraph, even before the singer has actually vocally expressed the intention of the vocal line. There's something in their sense of working with singers who seem to know where and how the phrase is going. And that is a very, very difficult thing to do, because as we know, singers' instruments are in their bodies, and from day to day, circumstances are different, and the voice is different. You know, I wake up sometimes and say, I wonder what page my voice is on today. And in order to find out, I usually go back to a very familiar piece, such as the Et Incarnatus Est of Mozart, from the Mass in C minor. This is a very exposed piece. It's very much in the range of a soprano like myself. So I can use that as sort of a quality check, you know. But how these conductors have this intuitive sense, I really don't know, but it's what makes them very great.
Just let me ask you about this quality check of yours. What happens when you check out the quality and it isn't where you like it? What do you do?
Then I vocalize a little longer, and then if I really feel distressed, and I'll try to take a nap that afternoon and try to wake up as if it's a new day.
Start all over again.
Start all over again.
It has been a joy, as I suspected. Vaness opened the season on September 21st by performing all 4 roles in Hoffmann for the first time here, and the broadcast coming up on February 13th. Carol, what is the sequence? When do you come to the theater? When do you put your makeup on? When does the costume get set on? When do you use that little piano over there?
Well, it depends. It depends on the show.
Well, let's take Hoffmann.
For Tales of Hoffmann, you know, as the doll, I begin sort of towards the end of Act 1. So I really don't come on the stage for an hour and 15 minutes almost before I actually sing. So I come sort of late-ish. In a normal show like Così fan tutte, I would be in the theater by 6:30. But in this case, I come 7:30, and, you know, relax a little bit, warm up my voice, which I will have done earlier in the day anyway, and worry. And Victor does my makeup, which is quite complicated for the doll, because I have to look extremely artificial. So he has his glitter doll powder, you know, so your skin reflects almost like plastic, and big red cheeks covered with these beautiful red little sequins like glitter, which gives everyone a, you know, wonderful feeling of this enormous 6-foot doll.
When you are doing this enormous 6-foot doll, and then a few minutes later you're doing something else, or someone else.
Well, it's a little bit more than a few minutes, thank God, because I actually have to go from being this big plastic mechanical object to being a real flesh and blood young opera singer. So it's quite, I think while everyone is enjoying their gin and tonics and people are putting their feet up at home, I'm running back to my dressing room like a crazy person, ripping my wig off, and we're trying to get the red off my cheeks and doing a very, very quick natural makeup job and changing the wig and the costume. And even at 8 minutes, I'm rarely in my costume. It just takes so long, the makeup and everything. Plus, it's a distance, and from the stage to the dressing room area. So, it's good that I started doing aerobics because between the doll and the running back and forth, I get a lot of exercise.
Is it more difficult, leaving aside the costume changes, is it more difficult to do all 4 roles of this sort than it would be to take one role, but a nice long one?
They both present different things. The most difficult thing about Hoffman is actually the change of styles. Do you know that that Antonio, the middle opera singer, the young opera singer, is a very lyrical part with a few dramatic moments. The singing of Giulietta is much more dramatic and much more declamatory, and of course the doll is the coloratura showpiece. So in truth, I believe, note for note, I sing more in the first act of Così fan tutte than I actually do in the entire part, all the 3-4 parts in a Hoffman. Actually, the part of Stella, I really don't sing anything, but I get a great dress, I look really thin, and I go out and I have the great chance of listening to Mr. Domingo sing the very last part to me, which is, I feel terrific. I think, God, I got the greatest seat in the house.
It's an interesting point. When you have a singer, Domingo or any other great artist, singing to you, and you're not doing anything except reacting or listening to him, are you listening and reacting really, or is your mind fluttering somewhere and you're doing a part?
Well, for me, I'm always really there. I can't really do something and have someone as intense as Mr. Domingo or Sam Raimi or Luciano Pavarotti singing at me or to me, looking me in the eyes and not be there. It's impossible. I think probably if I was really scared, I might be more concentrating, but I've never been someone who is waiting to sing my next line. My next line is always a response in one way or another to the person who's singing to me.
You mentioned being scared. What about opening night at the
Oh, my God, we were apoplectic. We're absolutely walking around. We had so much energy.
You must have been a child when you were involved.
You're
in the
right,
auditions.
absolutely. It was such a long time ago.
What do you remember most about that period in your life? Because you actually were just out of the Academy of the West and studies with Lotte Lehmann.
Actually, I really hadn't finished with Lehmann because, if I'm not mistaken, that was 58, wasn't it? And I didn't really leave Santa Barbara until 59. But it was an extremely important moment in my life because we were trying to put monies together for my trip to Europe, you see. And having been a winner of the Metropolitan Opera auditions was certainly one of those amounts that I could use for my stay in Europe, because we had a year planned for Europe, you see. And that was an extremely important award to have received at that moment.
And what did you add to that? Were there a few other awards?
Yeah, there was a John Hay Whitney Fellowship Award, and that was the California Teachers, I think it's called California Federation of Teachers of Singing Award, and the Marian Anderson Award. So I had a few bucks to stay over in Europe.
And you felt it was important to go off to Europe for the experience and as a young singer.
I did, even though I had the chance to stay on here at the Metropolitan, because at that time we had the opera school, and but I don't know. I consulted with Madame Lehmann, with my first voice teacher, with my parents, and we felt that it was, and also Mr. Hurock, who was extremely interested in me at that time, and I thought those persons knew best. And they thought it's better for me to go to Europe, and that's what we did.
You've seen so many of your colleagues who have come along who have won these auditions too. Can you see the value in what is done for their careers? Let's say a Martino Arroyo or some, people like that.
Yes, well, I certainly know how important it is to be able to work in an opera house like the Met, an opera house that has such an enormous prestige, and you could learn a lot. But now, for instance, like Martina made her debut at the Metropolitan, if I'm not mistaken. She made her debut, operatically speaking, at the Metropolitan. If I'm not mistaken, I think Sherrill Milnes also was a recipient. And so it goes to show you that the National Council is a very important organization and an important part of the life of a young singer.
As in launching a career and giving importance to...
Absolutely.
And sort of sorting out the really good from all the mediocrity.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Doug AHLSTEDT, you've had an equally fascinating experience with the Metropolitan Opera national auditions because you were singing in the Western Opera Theater and with the San Francisco Opera in 1973, and then you won first prize and a contract with the Met. You decided to stay on at the Met for a few seasons and then move on. Why was all this?
Okay, let's go right back to San Francisco first. I'll pick up on something that Grace said about the importance of the National Council. I was unaware, really.
I didn't have that possibility. But you guys, I mean, that's a fantastic situation where you're able to learn your craft right there and get paid for it, too.
And have all that exposure to great singers.
That's right. I would have had the choice otherwise of singing all baritone repertoire or singing tenor repertoire that would have been wrong for me at the time. So they gave me the opportunity to make a living and at the same time make the transition into the repertoire.
Well, actually, Grace, when you won it, it was on the air, too, in a different format than now. Of course, there are no first, second, third prizes. So the whole auditions program has evolved quite interestingly over the years.
But you know, I find that it still is very, very important to belong to the Metropolitan Opera family. The little girl sitting out there in Boise, Idaho, hears it on the Saturday program, Timothy Jenkins singing, or Bumbry singing, or our friend AHLSTEDT. It's very important that they hear this, and we have the opportunity to let our voices be heard everywhere through the Metropolitan. I think it's just great.
And it is a family, I think, that helps.
And they've been very, very successful and wonderful production. And then after we do Carmen, I go off on tour with the Met, and we're doing, I do Carmen and Tosca on the tour. I sing, unfortunately, I'm not doing Carmen in Boston.
Yeah, you're running out for a concert, I hear.
Yeah, I've got to go to Louisville for a concert. I say I've got to go, but unfortunately that was planned long before the Met was planned. And then after that I come back to New York. You can get your fill of me, and I'm going to sing on the park concerts. I'm going to do the role of Amneris, which I haven't done here in a long, long time either. And I'm looking forward to those very much as well.
Now, you mentioned not having done Amneris in a long, long time. It's undoubtedly been even longer time that you hadn't done Carmen here.
That's right. I did my last Carmen's here, I think, in the Jean-Louis Barrault production in 1967 and 68. And I don't think that I did any reprises after that in America. I mean, I've sung Carmen for sure. But be that as it may, I put Carmen aside.
That's what I thought. You said that it wasn't right for you or something.
That's right. Oh, too bad I didn't bring those documents here. I was going to show the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I wasn't supposed to sing Carmen. I put her aside for 12 or 14 years. And now I've been given the green light. As a matter of fact, my doctors all said then, you can only pick up Carmen, resume Carmen, after we give you the green light. So they gave me the green light about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. And so now I've started to sing them again.
Well, we are going to consider Grace Bumbry in a variety of scenes from Carmen, including this rather unusual one.
Dance alone, no lady can romance alone. I ought to
Yes, we will not only hear Grace Bumbry as Carmen, but as Carmen Jones.
No, you won't hear me.
Well, we just did.
You will hear it on recording, perhaps, but that's about all.
What was the genesis of that? In 1960, whatever?
I was making some fast bucks. What do you think?
That what it was?
That was 1962, I think, 62 or 63. And it was at the very beginning of my career. And at the beginning of a career, you don't have many jobs, you know. So you take what comes. And that was one of the things that came. Unfortunately, I don't get any royalties from that.
Gee.
And it's been selling since 1962.
Well, I know. You made a bad deal there.
I sure did.
Well, listen, we'll leave Carmen Jones aside then for the moment and get back to Carmen.
Mhm.
You said that this decision, as I gather from what the way you spoke,
Mhm.
the decision was not a musical decision or a personal dislike of the part or anything. It was a doctor's decision.
Mhm,
Now,
that's absolutely
what's all
correct.
that about? What is there about singing Carmen that would not apply to singing Aida, Tosca, or anything else?
Well, I don't think it's the fact or the matter that it's Carmen. I think it's also the individual's voice, how that vocal instrument is put together, how you use it. And evidently I had been doing too many Carmens, and or anything, it just happened to be Carmen, that lies in the middle voice with such an enormous thrust that you've got to give in the middle voice. And I think I had been using that middle part of my voice for I won't say for too many performances, but maybe with too much power. Mm-hmm. And I put too much pressure onto the chords in the middle section of the that responds to the middle section of the vocal cords. In any event, it's all been documented. I was going through those papers yesterday. The problem came, let's say, in January of 1970. By July of 70, I was already much better. The doctors had told me to please not to sing any more Carmens, definitely no more Carmens until they gave me the green light, and that I was even speaking at a too low a register. The speaking voice was too low. I even had to, what do you call it, purposely think higher. And you know, when you're accustomed to speaking a certain way for many years, it's difficult to all of a sudden put the voice up high, just in talking even.
See, when I started broadcasting, I had the other problem. I have a very high voice.
Uh-huh.
And people kept saying, you sound, it's too high, you should talk lower. And I tried to, I kind of...
But there you're making a mistake, because you said people said. People have said the same thing about my voice, that I'm singing too high a register. But it's not them. It's not their voice, and they're not the doctors, you know? And I'm the one who's doing the singing. And you've got to just divorce yourself from what people think and say. And I remember very well, they were all saying, she's going to lose her voice, she's singing now Salome and the soprano repertoire, etc., etc. I can't listen to that junk. I cannot listen to it. I have to think do what is right for me. For me, my physical build-up, my vocal build-up, and if I satisfy my medical people, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Grace, is singing a role the danger or the problem in singing a role such as Carmen? Is it purely the tessitura, so to say, it is solely the range, the middle voice, or is it also that this particular role demands a greater infusion, let's say, of passion, of emotional energy than another role? Is that part of it?
No, I don't think that has much bearing on it. No, I think it has to do really basically with the music, how the music is written. It's written in the middle part of the voice, and you've got to get past the orchestra, because the orchestra, even though in the habanera and the chanson de bohème, not the chanson de bohème, the other one, the seguedilla, you have a light orchestration, but that's only 2 little arias in the course of an evening. Yeah. The other things they all lie in that middle section of the voice. Look, for instance, the fourth act. The fourth act is all middle voice and a little bit of a middle range, high, medium high. Low to medium high. Maybe I think the top note really goes to an F, and that's not very high. But be that as it may, it sits there in an area of the voice that calls for a lot of power to get past the orchestra, to go and to fill up a house that has 4,000 seats. And for you to constantly do that, and don't forget, I've been singing Carmen since 1960. That was my operatic debut in Basel, Switzerland. In 1960 to 1967 or 68, that's a lot of Carmens. I mean, in my first season in Basel, I had 30 performances of Carmen to sing, you see. And it is difficult. It is a difficult piece of music. And I sing it now with a different technique. I sing it with a soprano approach. So that, which means that when I sing soprano, I know it's all very hypothetical we're talking about, because you can't put your finger on, you can't say this is that, and that's right and that's wrong. But for me, with my physical, my throat, my vocal cords, I have to think of Carmen as coming from above. When I sing, I have to think of producing the tones from above, whereas before I thought from thinking of it from coming from below. And I think that's really the true mezzo approach, you see. But as I've been now singing the soprano repertoire and realizing that what I did before was damaging, I purposely place it in a different position. I know it is all very airy-fairy what we're talking about over this radio to the radio audience,
but it also is fascinating, really.
I hope you can understand what I'm saying.
I think so. The proper Segadia, along with the bonus of the duet, Grace Bumbry and Jon VICKERS, in this recording with Rafael Frubeck de Burgos conducting. Grace Bumbry is with us. She sings the last Carmen of the Met season tomorrow night, and we'll have several more on tour in Cleveland, Atlanta, and Minnesota, along with a group of Toscas. And I said that I would invite our second guest to the microphone around 12:30, but Brynjar Hoff, I'd like to welcome you a little earlier.
Thank you.
Because you were nodding in total understanding as Grace Bumbry was explaining all of the processes of the singing. Now, you apply all of this to your oboe playing, I trust, in some fashion.
Yes, you see, unique in the world.
Well, we all
who
do.
Can do who can manage to do so many different parts, dramatic parts, using the high parts and also the middle voice.
Brynjar, there is not an equivalent in playing the oboe of that different parts of the voice. I mean, whether you play high or low or Mozart or Britten, it doesn't really affect the demands on you.
No, of course not. I can't tell everything that I want in this instrument. It's too
Brynjar Hoff says that he feels more than he can get through his instrument.
Yeah.
Now, don't you find yourself in certain highly explosive roles feeling that you want to project something and yet knowing that you must save yourself because you've got a high C in the next scene or something like that? Don't you have to also temper your own emotional giving?
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, let's say, for instance, in a recording, in both of these recordings, as a matter of fact, they both sound as if I'm holding back. I think the first one, the Carmen Jones, I was holding back because I didn't know any better. But by the time of the proper recording of Carmen with Mr. Frubeck de Burgos, it was a different thing. I was already into my career. I already knew how to sing Carmen, and I had been performing her for about 6 or 7 years. But you don't really know how far to go in a recording. Are you going to perform for the recording, or are you going to record for that recording? So I didn't know what to do. Shall I give more of an interpretation? If I give more of an interpretation, it might not be quite as beautiful. Getting back to the point that Mr. Hoff was making.
Yeah, don't you think, excuse me, but don't you think this problem, giving to less or too much, especially in that part, in Carmen?
Yes, there's a danger, I guess, of over.
Carmen is especially, so it's such a special, difficult part. So,
But that's what I originally said. I said that initially. It's
because
so,
it's easier to give more when you are coming up.
if it's up high because of the decibels by themselves.
Yes.
But when you're in the middle voice, how far can you go? How many decibels do you reach? So you've got to have a bit more power there.
Yes.
Either that or you bring the orchestra down. Then you lose something.
Yes.
Yeah. Grace, if you were recording Carmen today, how do you think you would approach it?
Oh, I would lean towards the interpretation more so than the voice.
Let the engineers take care of the rest of it.
Exactly. I think so, because I think Carmen is a very special role in the entire repertoire. Maybe you might even compare it to a Don Giovanni, because maybe not even that, because Don Giovanni has a much more direct line. But Carmen, because of the nature of the beast, you've got to give more of an interpretation, I think, than giving beautiful sounds.
Grace, you mentioned the production that you are now in. How important are the surroundings to you? How important is the production? If it's, some people say, oh, that's an ugly one, and the costumes are this, or the lighting is that. Do those things really affect you, or do you just go and sing your...
No, they do affect you for sure. Because... let's say, for instance, something as banal as a costume. If the costume does not fit you, does not suit your nature, your character, then of course you're not going to be the character that you really would like to be, because you see yourself in the mirror. All right. So but something even more important than that, of course, is the staging, or just as important. If the production, the staging is not what you're accustomed to, or not as good even as something you're accustomed to, because there might be some moments that you might not be accustomed to, but might be better than what you've been doing. But in the event where the particular thing is not as good, then you've got to make it better. But then you've got to fight with the stage director, who has been left a certain responsibility, and his responsibility is to be as true to that production, the original production, as was possible. But if it's not good for me, then I've got to change it, and I've got to convince him that what I'm doing is going to be better.
So I guess singers have to do more
it's
than
not
just
easy.
sing.
No, that's for sure.
All right, we are going to return yet again to the Carmen recording, the proper Carmen, as Grace Bumbry refers to it, and back up to the entrance.
First appearance, and they must do well, and we'll see. And he was always very aware of the difficulties of young American and Canadian artists who were just starting, because he knew how difficult it was. I can talk about him as a person. All the interviewees that you have seen previously could talk about his career. And his career is something that everybody knows about. I know about his concerns.
Nora, why don't you tell our friends here about the current competition and who the winners were and what their future might bring them.
We had a wonderful competition. We had an extraordinary number of wonderful talents, and we had a wonderful jury. And it was very, very difficult, but we gave 6 important prizes, George London Awards. They went to mezzo-soprano, Joyce DiDonato, wonderful coloratura soprano, Aline Coutan. We gave a special prize in memory of Leonie RYSANEK, who's a dear friend, as you know, and who passed away just recently. And we gave 3 prizes to 3 wonderful tenors. Big event. The tenors were Matthew Polenzani, Thomas Studebaker, and Gregory Touré. That was amazing.
The interesting thing about it, that 2 of these gentlemen, young gentlemen, Mr. Polenzani and Mr. Studebaker, were on stage yesterday afternoon, both of them filling in for ailing Met colleagues. They were sort of thrown to the wolves, and they acquitted themselves wonderfully. I was there, and
You were on the
I was on a
quiz
yes.
yesterday. I heard you.
I didn't have to sing, but these two did. These two did, and they sang
And they did
very,
sing
very
well.
well.
And they're all very handsome. En plus.
That doesn't hurt either.
I noticed. And we also gave 6 encouragement grants to, there were some baritones, which I loved, and another soprano, and they will come back next year, and I'm sure it will be wonderful.
Right. You mentioned the late Leonie RYSANEK, and I'd like to add just a couple of words, because her career was so strongly intertwined with that of George London, and the best way to hear the two of them in action is to look for the Flying Dutchman recording on London label, where these two, who had given unforgettable performances on the stage of the Met and also in Bayreuth, are captured in their absolute prime and vocal bloom. And of course, she will be lovingly remembered because only recently we admired her in that very unusual acting performance in The Queen of Spades, just a couple of seasons ago. But of course, she lives on many, many recordings. And as a matter of fact, RCA Victor, BMG, RCA, they released a CD containing several selections not previously released. The record companies are so busy advertising Mr. Alagna and Miss Georgiou and the latest Metropolitan Opera problems about casting and cancellations that they forget about some very important recordings, and you really have to look in various record stores in faraway bins to find some of your favorite artists who have not been forgotten. They are available on records, but for some reason record companies don't advertise them. I know the reason, but you really should worry about that. Look for the various names in the various bins. Is there anything else we have to cover before we go on to the concert?
Yeah, well, I would like to say a few words about next season. I think that you will be very pleased. Next season will mark 75 years that the Morgan Library became a public institution. The Morgan Library and I were born the same year. So we are very, very happy that the Morgan Library would like to continue this recital series with us, and we will have a very special season with 3 extraordinary recitals. The first one with Dawn Upshaw, who will present young baritone Stephen Powell, who was a winner in 1996. The second one is with Thomas Hampson, who will present young tenor Gregory Touré, who's a winner just in 98. And the third one will be with Samuel Ramey, who will present soprano Sandra Radvanovsky, who's a winner in 1997, who actually also already made her debut at the Metropolitan Opera. And the composer Thomas Passatieri, who was presented by George in Washington in an opera that he wrote, which was called The Seagull, many years ago in the 70s, will compose, specially in honor of George, a recital, a song series for Thomas Hampson. That's wonderful news.
I think that just about ties it up.